And could you please take your seats? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. My name is Christian Feichting. I'm the Executive Director of the International Astronautical Federation, and I have the honor and the pleasure to lead you through this Global Space Exploration Conference as your Master of Ceremonies. We will now start with our opening ceremony, and I would like to invite on stage the President of the International Astronautical Federation, Professor Dr. Bernd Feuerbacher, for his welcome remarks.
Presidents, heads of agencies, colleagues, and friends. In the name of the International Astronautical Federation, I would like to welcome you to the Global Exploration Conference here today. My particular thanks go to the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics. I made it. I have the habit of having the astronautics first. I apologize for that. Who have been so efficient in doing the organization for this conference flawlessly. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate my friends and colleagues from SpaceX and from NASA for the great event, the great success that they achieved this morning, in fact. Falcon flies, and Dragon will approach the ISS, I presume, on Friday. This is a breakthrough. It's a breakthrough in spaceflight, and it's also a breakthrough in exploration, and I am looking forward for a considerable change in the affordability of spaceflight in the near future. Still, exploration will remain a global challenge. This is the reason why we have called you here today. The Global Exploration Conference is the first of its kind, and it's unique. It is complementary to the International Conference on Exploration that last took place in Lucca, in Italy, which convenes the political leaders, and it's also complementary to the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, which convenes the agency representatives. Actually, the ISECG is integrated very well into this event, and I would like to very much welcome the new chairman of the ISECG, which is Iguchi Yamamura, who will be here in a second. But the past chairperson of ISECG, Cassi Lorini, is co-chairing the International Program Committee of this conference together with Chris Sallerberger from the Space Exploration Technical Committee of the IAF. So you might ask yourself, why organize a conference on exploration in times of financial turmoil when many nations are facing severe budget cuts? I think this might just be the right time and also the right place. The money for these ambitious missions will not be spent in space, as you know. It will be spent and invested in the best brains and in cutting-edge technology, which will help to stimulate economic growth and create jobs, especially in times when economic stimulus is regarded to be helpful for stimulating global economy. Technical stimulus. It is opportune to think about exploration. The science and engineering of exploration is very challenging. This is why I think it should be done in a global endeavor. At a time of political instabilities, a challenging common goal like exploration might help to foster peace and to reduce international tension. Science and technology breakthroughs are expected from exploration, and actually during the 3 days coming up here there will be several presentations on the past and present results of space experiments that have direct impact on our daily life. And we hope to make the public more aware of these achievements. Finally, I think that exploration is a magnet to the emerging generation. At a time when nations are suffering from an aging workforce, what better way to attract young talent? With this, once again, I wish to extend a warm welcome, and I trust that you will find the 3 days coming up here in this environment rewarding, helpful, and exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Feuerbacher. It is now my pleasure to call on stage and welcome on stage Dr. Michael Griffin, the President of the Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, for his welcome.
I hope some of you have the experience on some occasion of trying to combine old age vision, dim light, and small print. With all that said, I want to welcome you here to this conference on behalf of the AIAA sponsor, and also to Washington, D.C., a city in whose environs I lived and worked for 19 years. If you have not been or have not often been to Washington, I'd urge you to take advantage of some of the sites and some of the restaurants and just the unique experience of Washington, D.C. For those who are old hands, welcome back. We are, as Bernd was saying, we are excited to be partnering with the IAF on this venture, the first Global Exploration Conference. In the long run, spaceflight, and in the not so very long run, we hope, spaceflight does not have as its primary purpose getting from the surface of the Earth to low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is a station-keeping point. It's a waypoint. It's a waypoint outward beyond the Earth. As Arthur C. Clarke said half a century and more ago, once you're in low orbit, you're halfway to anywhere. But it's the anywhere that we want to go. It's not just staying close to home. So this Global Exploration Conference focuses on that, and I couldn't be happier to be representing now my organization for the next 2 years, AIAA, in helping to promote this conference. We have plenary sessions, we have keynote speakers, we've got technical papers and panel discussions. I've been drafted to participate in 2 of the panels, and many of you here are in a similar situation. I'm looking forward to all of this. It's the discussion that contains the real value of these conferences. It's when we get together and discuss issues that the real value emerges. I particularly want to thank the program committee co-chairs, Chris Salagerger, Hitoshi Kuniaka, my apologies, Kathy Larini, and the entire program committee that's listed in the brochure. Especially, I want to thank our industry sponsors, without whom literally these conferences would not take place. They simply would not. So Lockheed Martin, Boeing, United Launch Alliance, Battelle, Pacific International Space Center for Exploration Systems. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our official media sponsor is Space News, so thanks to them as well. The arrival of Space News on the scene in our community 2 decades and more ago, they've now become an integral part of this community. One really cannot imagine the space community without Space News. You can follow GLEX on Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, and of course AIAA will be reporting out in the morning clips on key developments from this conference. And the hashtag #GLEX 2012 will help connect you up. So with those opening remarks covered, I also want to echo Bernd in offering congratulations to SpaceX for their landmark accomplishment this morning. I provided an official quote earlier, as is required for the AIAA president, and it was heartfelt, and I'll say again in front of all of you that this is again the third launch of the Falcon 9, certainly a successful launch. We're well on the way with a great demonstration effort here on this launch. In the end, of course, commercial space is not a strategy, it's a procurement policy. It's a procurement approach. We haven't had in government, we haven't had the option to procure substantial goods and services by means of conventional arm's length commercial transactions in the past. We could do it on a few occasions for certain things. But as a go-to strategy for procurement, we have not had, for those of us who've served a lot of time in government, we've not had that option to use standard arm's length conventional commercial contracting. NASA has, over the last few years, spent considerable muscle mass, used considerable muscle mass to try to help bring this capability into being. Today's launch was not the fruition of those efforts, but it is certainly a key step along the way. And so I congratulate the folks at NASA who've helped bring it about, and certainly the folks at SpaceX who did the heavy lifting. With that, I'd like to turn the stage over to Yomura-san to say a few words on behalf of the International Space Exploration Coordinating Group. I can almost get through all those initials. The ISECG. So, Yomura-san? And a former resident of Huntsville, I might add, I just found out.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to make my opening remarks representing not JAXA, but the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, ISEC. ISEC is pleased to support planning and preparing for GLEX, and I congratulate IF and AIAA, for realizing such an extensive and intensive international conference on global space exploration. Here at this city of beautiful cherry blossoms, presented by Japan 100 years ago, I would like to cherish and cheer the exploration community and its old and new supporters. It's also my personal interest or pleasure to be one attendee to discuss humans' new challenge for young generations, since I've devoted most of my life, including days at Huntsville, devoting my life at work in JAXA to the International Space Station ISS program. And we learned very much from this most successful and challenging program and excellent partners working together. JAXA is honored to be in the position of leading ISEC during this critical time for discussing global space exploration and building consensus of various stakeholders. ISEC, established in 2007, is a non-binding multilateral agency coordination forum for spacefaring nations interested in contributing to a global space exploration effort. There are now 14 space agencies in ISEC, including 5 ISS partners and other 9 agencies from Asia, Europe, and Oceania. In the ISEC framework, we discuss globally coordinated human and robotic exploration of destinations, which humans can reach in the next decades, such as Moon, near-Earth asteroids, and Mars. The GLEX program is aligned with ISEC agencies' interests, which are identifying implementable approaches to success or to sustainable space exploration. We discuss future opportunities for international coordination and cooperation, and also we promote stakeholders' understandings of benefits to agency at GLEX. Space agencies recognize the importance of ISS not only as a general research facility, but also in support of space exploration. ISS can be used as a unique testbed for verification of new technologies and for accumulation of data and experiences through human presence in space and globally organized operations. The ISS and its partnerships are laying the foundation for the challenging missions of the future. I'm confident that the international cooperation and coordination will be successfully achieved in the area of space exploration if the partners are continuously positive and active toward these common goals. I'm confident because in the ISS program, at any politically or technically difficult situations, the partners who I see here also finally found solutions and achieved what was agreed. I wish for a successful GLEX conference here, followed soon by further international cooperation initiatives to exploration or to explore space. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yamamura. Now I would like to invite on stage Mr. Robert Lightfoot, NASA Acting Associate Administrator, for his welcome remarks. Mr. Lightfoot is representing Mr. Charles Bolden, who could not be, for obvious reasons, with us today.
Thank you to the IF and AIAA for sponsoring this conference, and on behalf of Charlie Bolden, I welcome you to D.C. Wish we had a little more sunny weather, but maybe that'll happen by the end of the week. He does send his regrets, but he was on hand for this morning's successful launch of SpaceX carrying the Dragon capsule to the International Space Station. I'll echo everybody's comments. This is going to be an exciting week for us as we watch the Dragon go through its maneuvers and hopefully ultimately berth with the International Space Station. I want to congratulate the SpaceX team and the NASA folks that stood alongside them getting them to this point. It's a big accomplishment, and we're very, very, very excited about what this week holds for us. It's good to be here among so many friends and colleagues from around the world. It's a pretty exciting time to be in the space business. Global interest in space is soaring. the governments, businesses, associations, institutions of higher learning are all looking for creative ways to work together to do this exploration vision and mission that we all look forward to. And the young people from around the world are eager to take their place as the next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers. This is especially true for the team at NASA. We are literally at the brink of a new era in space exploration. We have 3 priorities that we're working on: the International Space Station operations and utilization, including the development of and commercially provided crew and cargo, which we got off to a great start early this morning; development of the heavy lift launch vehicle, Space Launch System, and the crew capsule, the multi-purpose crew vehicle, for exploration beyond low Earth orbit as we take ourselves further and further away from this planet; and the development of the James Webb Space Telescope, the next great observatory. As most of you know, NASA has a long history of international cooperation. While we're proud of NASA's global leadership, we also are mindful that the scientific and human spaceflight accomplishments of the past half-century would not have been possible without international cooperation and successful collaboration with a lot of our partners who are here today. Since NASA's creation 52 years ago, we have entered into about 4,000 agreements with more than 120 nations, touching almost every aspect of our activities. Right now, we have 546 active international agreements conducting some form of ground-based research on every continent and working with nations around the world to develop and implement the next generation of space exploration missions. This cooperation is the definition of a win-win, bringing multiple benefits to everyone involved. I personally believe the success of our modern space program will be judged in part on how well we continue to make space exploration about global partnership, particularly since it's clear that no nation can do it alone and the benefits to be gained are for all humanity. With NASA's long history of successful international cooperation and more nations relying on space-based capabilities to support their day-to-day lives, I have every reason to believe that we will continue to build these strong relationships around the world and create a unified effort for expanding humanity's horizons beyond our planet. Everywhere I go, I see the fire in the eyes of students who are learning how important science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are to understanding our world and how they can make a real difference in pursuing those career paths. It's up to us to make sure they have a career path to go to. So the future, because of that fire I see in their eyes, looks bright to me. I believe that space exploration is good for the world, and I see America continuing to lead the global exploration efforts. But as Mike said, at the end of the day, it's the people like you from around the world sitting around the table with one another who will ultimately bring the benefits of exploration to more people here on Earth. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a great week and a great conference.
Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. And finally, let me welcome on stage Mr. John Karras, Vice President and General Manager, Human Spaceflight of our Platinum sponsor, Lockheed Martin Space Systems. Mr. Karras, please.
Good morning, everybody. Speech gets worse from here, so save your applause. Anyway, first of all, I'm just excited to be here today so we can focus on global exploration. First, I want to thank the AIAA and the AIF for hosting this first-of-a-kind joint event. And, of course, it was envisioned about a year ago, and all the fruits of a lot of hard work and labor is paying off here today. So I want to thank Bernd and Mike for their support for doing this, and it's a pleasure working with your organizations. Lockheed Martin has been a proud and long-time member of both the AIAA and the AIF, and we are honored to serve as your platinum sponsor for this conference for this week. This is the first global exploration conference, and it's focused on the cooperation for human exploration beyond low Earth orbit. It's the first conference since the ISECG group roadmap was revealed last September, and I'd like to thank Yamamura-san for now being the co-chair of that group, or the chair of that group now for this conference, and for his turn at chairing this august group. And also I want to thank Charlie Bolden and Robert Lightfoot for being the host agency here in the United States. Most of all, I really want to thank the governments, the industry members, the academia attendees, and the heads of agencies that are here today that make all this possible, for the panels and the papers and the discussion and the cooperation. Without you, none of this would be possible. So thank you very much. A round of applause for everybody. This conference is an important part of creating a broader global consensus on human exploration, so we can have a more sustainable vision beyond low Earth orbit. As many people have said, we must marshal our resources because of the times that we're in, both economically and the age of our workforce. So we must work together. Space exploration is a global endeavor. Together, I know we can be greater than the sum of our parts, and together, I know we can reach farther. So I wish everybody a really good conference, and let the festivities begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karras. This concludes our opening ceremony, and before we start our first highlight, our first plenary event, I would like to remind you about tonight's welcome reception and poster session, which is sponsored by our gold sponsor, the Boeing Company. It will start at 6:30 p.m. in this room and in the solarium just behind the registration area. I would also like to mention tomorrow's off-site reception at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum at 7:30. The reception is sponsored by our platinum sponsor, Lockheed Martin. How to get there? You will find a map on a separate sheet in your final program. Now we will start our plenary program with the first plenary session involving distinguished heads of agencies, and I'm pleased to ask the following panelists to take their seats on the stage for the Global Space Exploration Dialogue. Mr. Robert Lightfoot, NASA Acting Associate Administrator, representing Mr. Charles Bolden. Professor Jean-Jacques Dordain, Director General of the European Space Agency. Dr. Steve McLean, President of the Canadian Space Agency. Mr. Vladimir Popovkin, Head of Russia's Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos. Dr. Ranganath Navalgund, Professor Vikram Sarabhai, Distinguished Professor at the Indian Space Research Organization. Dr. Navalgund is representing Dr. Radhakrishnan, who could not be with us today. Mr. Yuichi Yamaura, Associate Executive Director of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, replacing Dr. Tachikawa. Unfortunately, Mr. Chen Chufa, Administrator of the China National Space Administration, had to cancel his participation. And last but not least, I would like to welcome on stage Mr. Robert Dickman, Executive Director of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics.
Thank you.
He will be the moderator for this plenary session.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, and welcome, everyone. One of the traditions of conferences that involve the IAF is that they open with a distinguished panel. There's always a mixture of agency heads and representatives of those agencies specifically designated by the agency head to represent their organization if they can't be present. This conference is no exception. We're very fortunate to have with us this group of representatives from Canada, the European Space Agency, India, Japan, Russia, and the United States. This is an exploration conference, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that with us today is Buzz Aldrin from the Apollo 11 crew, that first exploration of the moon. Welcome, Buzz. Glad to have you here. At the dawn of the space age, space exploration was the province of one nation. It was followed very quickly by a second, later by a third and a fourth and a fifth, and now many more. Today, space activity is a mix of private enterprise, as we saw this morning, national programs, and international cooperation. If you drew a hexagon with a line for each of those international engagements from these organizations that are seated here, and you try to connect all the dots, you'd have a black piece of paper. International cooperation is, in fact, what makes space exploration work today. This morning, panelists will reflect on their agency's current exploration plans And then we're going to invite the panel to discuss some various aspects of cooperation. Some of the discussions will be based on questions that we've already provided the panelists, but we welcome your questions also. You can fill out a card. They'll be available here in the audience, or text them to 571-306-2854, and that's with a +1 if you're using an international telephone. In general, I'll try to word questions that I receive that can be addressed by more than one individual, so I would encourage you not to ask specific questions about a specific agency's details of their program, but more general in nature. Of course, the successful launch of Falcon this morning is certainly going to come up as part of the discussion, and I'm sure we're going to see that as part of the dialogue. I invite you to do your own research for detailed biographies of our panelists. In the interest of time, let me give just a brief introduction of each one. Steve McLean has been the president of the Canadian Space Agency since September 2008. Prior to that, he was the chief astronaut in the Canadian Space Agency. He's flown in space 2 times, on the Space Shuttle Columbia in 1992 and on Atlantis on STS-115. Dr. McLean's technical training is in physics. Jean-Jacques Dordain has been the Director General of the European Space Agency since 2003. Prior to that, he was the Director of Launchers at ESA. His technical training is, well, he really is a rocket scientist. Ranganath Nevalgun is representing the Indian Space Application Center, ISRO, where he is the Professor Vikram Sarabhai, Distinguished Professor at ISRO headquarters in Bangalore. Prior to that, he was the Director of Space Application Center at ISRO at Ahmedabad. Dr. Nevalgun's technical training is in physics. You met Yuichi Yaramura earlier in his role as the chair of the International Space Exploration Coordinating Group. On the panel, Yamura-san is representing the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, where he is the Associate Executive Director. Prior to that, he was the Director of Strategic Planning and Management at JAXA. His technical training is in aeronautics and astronautics. Vladimir Popovkin has been the head of the Russian space agency, Roscosmos, since April of 2011. Prior to that, he was the first Deputy Minister of Defense. He retired following a 30-year active-duty military career as General of the Army. His technical training is in engineering science. You've heard that Charlie Bolden is not with us. He had a conflict this morning. Many of you know he flew 4 times in space. He was an astronaut. During those days, he could just go jump in his T-38 and fly home. He can't do that as the administrator of NASA. He has to fly commercial in our current world. So we are glad to have Robert Lightfoot representing Charlie and NASA. Robert is the Associate Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. He has been that since March of this year. Prior to that, he was the Director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. His technical training is in mechanical engineering. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. McLean to begin our discussion. Steve?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very pleased to see that this is the first Global Exploration Conference, and I look forward to many more. I first would like, as everyone else has this morning, congratulate SpaceX. I think it is nothing short of phenomenal what they've been able to do in a short time, and I also congratulate NASA for giving the framework that allowed them to do that. I'd like to discuss a couple of things in the 3 to 4 minutes that I have, and one is just basically a discussion around mandates with respect to the Canadian Space Agency, and then in addition to that, I'll just cover a few details of what we plan to do in exploration. Initially, what we're doing today is we are contributing to operating space station. We're utilizing space station, and we hope in the coming years to be able to use our percentage more effectively. And also, we're contributing to space-based astronomy. The Canadian Space Agency has a mandate for space-based astronomy. We work in conjunction with the Hertzberg Institute in Canada. And there's something that I find interesting in terms of justifying exploration, and even though they're operationally disconnected, what we do in space-based astronomy at the systems level is disconnected from what we're doing in human exploration. I have strong feelings about the fact that the storyline that justifies why we explore space are tremendously connected, and in front of our center, I spend a great deal of time saying that within our mandate of exploring space, we explore space with robots, we explore space with humans, and we explore space using astronomy type technology. And when you put the story together in this kind of a rationale, I find that in the Canadian Centre, at any rate, it resonates more than if you just try to justify it based on human exploration. And I'm going to extend that into our national lab system. Like the United States and like Europe, we have a framework of a national lab system. And the second part of this that I find interesting is that even though we are entirely disconnected from the national lab system, if you look at their mandates, if you look at their top priorities, for example, in physics, if you look at the top 5 questions at the National Light Center that we have, if you look at the top 5 areas that they're working in, and you do that with TRIUMPH, which is our particle physics facility, you start to see connections between what we're trying to do in space and what they are trying to do. Sometimes we're able to answer a question that they have. Sometimes they have a technology that perhaps that we could use. And so it is my intent in Canada to coordinate an activity between our national lab system, our ground-based astronomy, and the Canadian Space Agency to kind of promote the storyline that justifies why we are exploring space. It is an ambitious program that we have. Operating space station right now is something that we all can be proud of. The next steps in exploration are ambitious, and it requires an ambitious rationale. And I think that there is elegance in a rationale if it entertains the entire science and technology community that we have in Canada and, in fact, in the world. Now, second part of what I'd like to do is from a Canadian perspective, we are a small agency, and we hope to participate in the next major steps of exploration. In order for us to succeed, it is important that, even though we are small, that our contribution, our participation, just as it was on Space Station, is inline, critical, and visible. And it is very important that we're able to do that. We're going to take an approach of signature technologies, and again, because we're small, we'll very much think at the component level. And what I mean by signature technologies is that you have a niche area that has multiple applications in multiple destinations. And I would like nothing more to see Canadian technology working in low Earth orbit, Canadian technology working on the Moon, Canadian technology on Mars, asteroids, and the Lagrangian points. And if we are successful there, it will give us a metric, again, which the Centre can appreciate. Now, on top of those signature technologies, we are working with terrestrial equivalents. In fact, we had a recent success where work that we were doing on our lunar rovers is now part of a product line with Bombardier Recreational Products, where they have developed the first entirely electric ATV. If we continue to have that kind of metric, where on top of having signature technologies in every destination, we also have terrestrial equivalents, it will be easy for us to show the Centre how what we're doing not only leads to national pride, not only enhances our reputation internationally in front of the Centre, but it also leads to economic prosperity. And so it is the Canadian Space Agency's goal to pursue it in that way. I will leave you with 5 areas that the Canadian Space Agency is working on to give you just a little bit of the details of what our approach is. So the Canadian Space Agency will continue to operate the MSS and utilize ISS to advance exploration through life science studies related to human spaceflight and through technology demonstration. ISS is the destination today for Canadian astronauts. CSA will continue to pursue space robotic servicing by advancing the MSS and assessing the value of robotic servicing for space infrastructure in Earth orbit or in the cislunar space. And I am very proud of what we have done recently with the Next Generation Canada arm. We basically have produced an arm that, in addition to the control that the MSS has, we have a telescoping membranes, tremendously improves its operational envelope. CSA will contribute robotic technologies and science instruments for moon exploration with a specific interest in the in-situ resource utilization. And here is an area where we have now involved the civil sector of our community. CSA will continue to have a focus on robotic exploration of Mars with the aim of a sample return mission in the future, where we hope to participate in that. And CSA will maintain its activities in space astronomy with a focus on their two top areas and their strategic plan, dark energy and high energy astrophysics. Thank you very much.
Jean-Jacques? Okay, thank you. So I would like to join all those who have already celebrated the launch of Dragon this morning. I think that it's a very important event, and it can even be a breakthrough in the way we are exploiting the International Space Station, and that we shall explore. So bravo to SpaceX and NASA, and bon courage, because this is the first step this morning. There is still some steps to cross. This is not a reservation, this is just superstition, and this is what I am saying at each launch of the ATV. So it's not related to Dragon per se, but to all missions where there are several steps to be crossed. But this is a very important event. Now, I shall not spend time today to justify why each euro invested in exploration goes back to Earth. And because you are all convinced, so we have to justify each euro invested, and especially in difficult economic times, and I am doing that. But I don't think that this is the right place, because you are all convinced, so I think that no use to spend time on that. Now, I would like to maybe to make three remarks. First of all, I shall try to explain that exploration is not an isolated activity in space, and that exploration is almost everywhere in what we are doing in space. I shall come back to that. Number two, to tell you how at ESA we are trying to not to have competition between destinations, and especially between the destination planet Earth and the destination beyond planet Earth, because we are also exploring planet Earth. There is still a lot to learn on planet Earth. And the third remark that I shall make is about the issues, and with my usual mention of the difficulties of cooperating. And I can tell you that we know that at ESA, making 19 member states working together, not easy, but successful. And I shall come back to that. So, first of all, exploration is not an isolated activity, and we cannot speak of exploration as if it was something different from the other space activities. Because for exploring, we have to transport, we have to have telecommunications, we have to have navigation, we have to have observation systems, so we have to have robotics. And all that is in all space activities. And I think that this is very important to understand. And especially at ESA, I can tell you that the borderline between what we call exploration programs and what we call science programs, not easy to define. Because we are making a lot of science in exploration, as well as we are exploring a lot in science programs. And at ESA, maybe the only difference between exploration programs and science programs is the decision-making process. Yes, exploration programs are mostly driven by decisions of member states, while the science programs are mostly driven by decisions from the scientific communities. But apart from that, not a big difference. The content is not so different. And this is the reason why we have to take that also, because in exploration programs at ESA, we have basically three destinations. The low Earth orbit, and we are the partner on board the International Space Station. We have Mars, and especially with the mission ExoMars. And we are working also on some exploration missions to the moon, still to be decided. But we are looking at these three destinations as far as exploration programs are concerned. But in science we have also three destinations. First, planet Earth, because we are spending a lot of efforts to explore planet Earth. Number two, the solar system. including the Sun, but we are going to most of the planets of the solar system and the universe. And there are a lot of synergies between the exploration programs and the science programs in terms of technologies, be it robotics, being landing, rendezvous and docking, but also in terms of science with common themes between exploration and science, water, life, all these themes which are important, and I would say even synergies in terms of budget, because at the end this is the same type of money. This is money from the taxpayers. So just to say that exploration is not an isolated activity. Number two, we are trying to avoid competition between destinations. And just to say that we are spending as much money to explore the Earth than to explore beyond planet Earth. And that it's a very important aspect. We are, through the Earth Science program of ESA, we are launching one mission per year dedicated to Earth science and to understand the Earth and its environment. And we have basically one mission per year beyond planet Earth. Obviously, starting with the International Space Station, we have today one mission of ATV every year. But we are around Mars with Mars Express, and we plan to go to Mars with ExoMars. We have been around the Moon with Smart One, and we have planned to land on the Moon. We are around Venus with Venus Express. We have been on the Saturn, landing on Titan together with NASA, with the Cassini-Huygens. We plan to go to Mercury with JAXA. We plan to visit the Jupiter world together with Russia. And we are also looking at the universe. So just to say that we have basically one mission per year dedicated to the exploration of planet Earth and one mission per year dedicated to the exploration beyond planet Earth. And we are doing most of these missions in international cooperation with a lot of partners, be it on a multilateral basis or on a bilateral basis. So now, which are the issues? First of all, the burden of the budget of ISS. ISS is a fantastic place, and especially now that we are using the International Space Station, and the recent symposium in Berlin has demonstrated the benefits of using the space station, but the space station is a heavy budget burden. And we have to work among the partners to make sure that the ISS will not be to the detriment of other missions, and this is what we are trying to do. Second issue is to try and accommodate the development of infrastructure together with their utilization. Not easy. On the space station, we have made the choice first to assemble the space station and then to use it. And that is a problem, because it means that the users, they have waited for 20 years before starting to use the space station. And I know that I was in charge in 86 of the utilization of the space station. And by the way, the utilization has started at least on the European side in 2008, meaning 20 years to look at infrastructure and then to use it. And that is not only a problem for the users, but it's also a problem for industry, because they are spending 20 years to develop and then almost 20 years to produce. And industry has difficulty to go from a period of development to a period of production. And we have to in the future to see how we can much better accommodate the development of infrastructure and its utilization. The next issue is transportation. I said many times that the lack of a common transportation policy on ISS and exploration has led to significant problems, which may be solved in the future, and especially thanks to Dragon and others. But we have a problem of transportation, and especially because transportation is 50% of the cost of exploration. And so we have to try and cooperate much more on transportation. And I know that there is a lot of initiatives taken for cooperating in transportation. The last issue is cooperation. We have no alternative but to cooperate, because this is the essence of exploration, is to do it together. Obviously, cooperation is an important aspect of exploration, but as I said many times, cooperation is difficult. And we have to see how, and it is difficult and is slow, much slower than competition. And we have to work together to see how we can accelerate the cooperation without putting at risk the value of cooperation. And for that, I think that there are several ways to think. First is to keep some competition. I am a strong believer in competition. So we have to make a mix of cooperation on large infrastructure, but keeping the competition on science, keeping the competition on technology, because the competition is very important. So, and by the way, the competition is not anymore between countries or between governments. It's more competition between international teams, which is much more interesting. So a little bit of competition. Number two, we have to accommodate the cooperation in several formats. There is not one format of cooperation. There is cooperation where the multilateral aspect, the multilateral concept is important, where the bilateral concept is important, but it must be a mix of different formats, because if we have to wait until the last partner is ready to go, I think that we can wait for long. And this is the reason why we have to accommodate cooperation in several formats. And we have also to extend the cooperation beyond countries and space agencies. I think that all the initiatives which are taken today by industry to start cooperation are also more than welcome, because they complement and even they reinforce the cooperation that we have developed at space agency level. So I am all for this industrial initiative. And so as you can see, the world is changing and we have to change. We cannot apply the recipes of the past. I think that the future will not be made of the recipes of the past. Obviously, any change is always associated to resistance, which is always a good sign, because resistance means that there is movement, and and even maybe to crisis. But crises are only a sign of transformation. So let's work together to make these transformations leading to a better future. So thank you very much.
Professor Nettelgund.
Yeah. Distinguished heads of space agency, the panelists, as well as distinguished delegates, and Dr. Dickman, the moderator. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at Washington, D.C. to attend this particular conference organized by AIAA as well as IAF. It was a great pleasure for me to be here as well in 2010 in Washington, D.C. to attend a similar Heads of Space Agencies summit. While harnessing space technology for societal benefits and national development is the guiding force as far as the Indian space program is concerned, space exploration, in particular the study of the planets, as well as space weather, also forms an important component of the Indian space program. And we have made a beginning in the last decade or so on some of the space exploration experiment studies that India had to undertake. As many of you are aware, the mission to the moon, the first Chandrayaan-1, was one such example. It was a successful experiment in which many countries did participate by sending their payloads. Extremely good data of the scientific nature was obtained, and also it was a testimony to a characteristic of the international cooperation that we had with many of the spacefaring nations. As a sequel to this, we do have Chandrayaan-2, which is the Indo-Russian collaboration, sometime perhaps during early part of 2014, where not only we would have an orbiter, a lander, and rover, and many of the sophisticated instruments, including a dual-frequency radar, would be flown in order to further endorse the existence of ice in the polar regions. In addition to the missions to the moon, we also have a technology demonstrator, a mission to Mars, sometime the first opportunity that is provided at the end of 2013, in which we would have a probe, a spacecraft sent orbiting the Mars, of course at a very elliptical orbit of 500 by 80,000 kilometers, carrying a certain instruments to study some of the gases, methane and other things as part of this experiment as well. And in addition to that, of course, to study the sun's corona as well as an astrosat in order to make measurements at different wavelength regions of many of the sources that could be there in space are also part of these exercises that we are taking up in space exploration-related activities. Of course, in addition to that, a program on human space flight is on. Many of the subsystems components which are required related to the design of the crew module, man rating of the launch vehicle, astronaut training, and many of these activities have begin in the Indian space program as part of this exploration, and soon we would have a concrete plan of the human space flight as well. In addition to that, many of you might be aware that India is comparatively a young country. There are a large number of young students and scientists who are engaged and excited about space exploration. In order to provide a fillip to these aspirations, we also have a dedicated institute, Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, where the young students are taught not only on the benefits of space technology for the Earth itself, but also to understand the universe, the origin of planets, and space science, and so on, in many of these activities. And all these we would do in close coordination with a large number of not only space agencies, but also international organizations. So international cooperation in space, of course, in addition to many other fields, is something which is very basic to the Indian space program, and I do hope that this kind of a conference would provide an opportunity not only to exchange ideas, but also to learn much more about not only the space exploration-related activities, but also find ways and means of further endorsing and expanding the international cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yamada-san.
Yes. JAXA President Dr. Tachikawa needed stay in Japan for several subjects, including the important satellites launch by H-2A rocket at JAXA Tanegashima Space Center on Friday last week. The launch was very successful, and the JAXA's global climate change observation satellite will soon join the internationally contributing A-train orbit satellite community. Now, I think that developing advanced space technologies and advancing humankind's capability to extend its sphere of activity is the critical role of space agencies. Humankind can never reach on a heavenly body if space agencies abandon to achieve humankind's instinct, which is exploration. For humankind living in 2012, reaching Mars is not easy, but it's never impossible. This is because we, international partners of the ISS program, are now learning what to do and what not to do. And we are acquiring knowledge and experiences in various fields such as engineering, science, medicine, psychology, and so forth, in various areas. It is obvious that robotic mission and capabilities are truly necessary in any human exploration program. Before astronauts reach a heavenly body, it is necessary to know environment of of the body precisely and accurately. And it's necessary to demonstrate critical technologies and operational procedures. After they reach there, they need intelligent and powerful assistants, robots, who never complain or resist. In those contexts I mentioned, JAXA's approach for exploration is as follows. First, regarding human exploration, indispensable is the ISS, where we acquire technologies and knowledge of human presence in space, including the space transportation, through long-lasting international cooperation. Then, as a precursor of human exploration and the science mission, lunar missions are very important. JAXA's lunar orbiter, Selene, this spacecraft carried 15 instruments on board and completed successfully its 2-year mission in 2009. The lunar data acquired are internationally open and available to scientists, engineers, and general public. The next mission, Selene 2, is in Phase B, to be launched in 2017 to verify critical technologies such as landing, rowing, and camping in a severe lunar environment. Second, regarding more advanced robotic technology demonstration science missions, JAXA successfully completed the asteroid soil carryback mission by spacecraft named Hayabusa, a peregrine falcon, in 2010 after a 7-year trip. This mission demonstrated exploration technologies such as ion engines and artificial intelligence. This mission also provided scientific data and challenging opportunities for researchers. JAXA is now reviewing proposals from all over the world at the first announcement opportunity for soil analysis. The announcement opportunities will be provided next year also. The next asteroid exploration mission, Hayabusa 2, is now in Phase C to be launched in 2014. At last but not least, I would like to say that young and old Japanese people are and were inspired and motivated by the missions of the ISS, Selene, and Hayabusa. I chose 2 questions from Chairman. That the first one is how can space stations be used as platforms for exploration presentation? This is very important. I think that excuse me, I'm now checking my memo here. Okay, then anyhow, the most important thing for human exploration is that we need have humans alive and healthy in space, and we need to function the total system in space and on the ground safely and soundly. Then once some problem happened, the astronauts and people on the ground, like managers, engineers, and medical doctors and scientists, need to coordinate together, and they need to fix the problem immediately. Then also we need to maintain talented people who can operate or who can fix the problem and function it as it is designed. Then also the international cooperation should be smoothly work. So we need to establish kind of framework or ground rules which work very well. And also people who are attending in this big program need to keep a good relationship with each other and try to do their best. But we experienced or we realized this scheme in the space station program. So that's why I think they are, as a platform for exploration, ISS is important. Next, cooperation versus competition. It is very important also. Sustainability is indispensable in exploration of humankind. So in this context, I think that the international cooperation is necessary, and we can achieve it only with international cooperation. But from my experience, I will say that the competitors are not actually the international partners, but competitors are, how do I say, ourselves or discussion within our country or your country. Because just like Jean-Jacques Dodan said, we spend taxpayers' money, so we need taxpayers' support. It means that we have to explain why we do it instead of how we do that. So in the days during the negotiation with the government and other people in Japan, always we needed to negotiate the budget with the government. And also we negotiated with the private industries who develop the system because they need more money to get more money because they want to achieve it. And also coordination with users of the space station was very important. And then finally, the public support is indispensable in any cases. We needed to explain why exploration or ISS, why not recovery from the earthquake in a case. It's not easy, but we would like to explain that the space activities are very important for the future of young generation. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Popovkin.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. От имени Федерального космического агентства хотел бы искренне поприветствовать участников столь представительного форума, посвященному, пожалуй, самым передовым и грандиозным программам человечества. Это программа освоения космоса.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Russian Federation and Russian Space Agency, I would like to extend our warmest thanks for being invited to witness this grandiose and phenomenal congregation of people being involved in the idea of space exploration.
И сегодня Россия, как и все мировое космическое общество, находится накануне ответственных решений, связанных в первую очередь с освоением космоса, куда развиваться, какие ответственные решения принимать, какие задачи следует решать в первую очередь в космосе. И все от ответов на эти вопросы будет зависеть, куда будет развиваться космос и космические исследования.
Currently, Russia, just as much as the rest of the world, is about to start seeking answers to a variety of very important questions, and we need to better understand how to approach this idea in the most logical and sequential way. Where to fly, what would be the priorities, what would be the sequence of our efforts to conquer this very difficult idea, and just as much as the rest of the world, we would like to participate in a joint effort to be able to find those answers.
И в данной ситуации, вот как говорил организатор этой конференции, мы сейчас находимся в условиях очень больших финансовых ограничений, И если для наших коллег это какое-то новое состояние, то Россия уже последние 20 лет живет в этих финансовых ограничениях, и мы можем поделиться тут кое-каким опытом.
As it was mentioned before, several times actually today, we are trying to solve those issues under substantial pressure associated with the financial limitations. And it might be new for some participants of this process, but as far as Russia is concerned, there's nothing new about that. We've been living in these conditions like for the last 20 years. At this point, I can share my experience with a lot of you in this regard.
И именно такая ситуация позволяет еще раз более внимательно посмотреть на все те программы, которые сегодня существуют, и критически их проанализировать. Именно условия финансовых ограничений позволяет более бережно и более аккуратно отнестись к основным задачам и к тем приоритетам, которые могут быть в космической деятельности.
But financial limitations are given, and we cannot do much about that. So under the circumstances, we need to be even more diligent, even more attentive to details, and we need to scrutinize the scope of what we have to be doing, trying to select the most important pieces of what can be achieved, trying to prioritize what we have got to be doing in order to be successful, regardless of the financial limitations we are facing.
Провести дополнительные какие-то теоретические исследования, чтобы максимально сократить вероятность ошибочных решений.
And more so, we need to maybe come up with additional analytical and theoretical efforts in order to minimize the possibility of a mistake while trying to implement our programs.
Если же говорить о теме сегодняшнего исследования, то необходимо сказать, что проникновение человека в космос можно охарактеризовать 3 стадиями. Это исследование, это освоение и использование. Стадии, конечно, между собой связаны эволюционно, границы между ними носят условный характер, однако их наличие объективно и присутствует не только в космической, но и в любой другой человеческой деятельности.
If it comes down to the subject of our today's meeting, it is necessary to mention that basically the mankind on the way to the areas beyond the circumterrestrial orbits has several particular goals, and it's just an issue of getting there, first of all, and secondly, it's the issue of organizing the activities in order to make the presence of a human being outside of the circumterrestrial orbit productive, and streamlining all those efforts in order to make sure that we not only trying to get there, but we will come up with very tangible, substantially valuable results.
И исходя вот из этих постулатов, можно сделать вывод, что за 40-летний период эксплуатации орбитальных пилотируемых станций, как универсальных исследовательских платформ, низкие околоземные орбиты стали сегодня в значительной мере освоенной, вполне готовы к использованию орбиты, поскольку огромная часть исследований в этой пространстве уже завершена, либо носит выраженный прикладной характер. И здесь должен больше быть потребительский рынок. И вот успешный сегодняшний запуск SpaceX как раз и показывает переход к новому этапу использования низких орбит для пилотируемых экспедиций.
Now, we've been flying on the circumterrestrial orbits for 40 years now, and at this point of time we need to accept the fact that most of what we could have achieved over this time period has already been done. We don't have much to do as far as we're concerned, particularly in the way we've been doing this business. By the way, tonight's overnight's successful launch of SpaceX gives us a very symbolic representation that while trying the circumterrestrial orbits, we still are capable of flying a vehicle which is pursuing a set of completely different goals and objectives.
Мы присоединяемся к поздравлениям и нас, и компании SpaceX с успешным началом вот этой миссии.
And by the way, I would like to sincerely join the rest of the speakers today and extend our warmest regards and thanks for this enormous success, both SpaceX and NASA.
И, на наш взгляд, дальнейшее международное использование международной космической станции должно несколько поменять свои приоритеты и стать такой технологической платформой для отработки различных технологических операций для освоения других планет.
And in our view, our activities on the International Space Station have to be planned in a slightly different way. We would like to see this phenomenal lab as a test bed that would allow us an opportunity to verify and test lots of technologies that would be essential for us to be able to step up and reach the deeper space and new planets and new goals and objectives in space.
И здесь я присоединяюсь к своим коллегам, которые выступили раньше, что основные новые объекты исследований находятся в значительно более удаленном космическом пространстве, чем низкие околоземные орбиты. И здесь нам, конечно, необходимо, наверное, совместно со всеми вырабатывать приоритеты освоения этого дальнего космоса.
And I would like to echo previous presenters that whatever we are interested in right now is lying quite far away than the circumterrestrial orbit, and we need to streamline all our efforts and resources in order to lead the mankind on the way to those objectives, basically based on our common joint effort.
И здесь я ни для кого не открою секрет, в общем-то, 3 таких возможных направления, в которых ведутся дискуссии. Это Луна, это астероиды, это Марс.
And basically, I won't invent a wheel when I say that we have got 3 basic directions we might pursue, and this is Moon, Mars, and asteroids.
И уже несколько лет тут как раз ведутся эти разговоры, дискуссии и в России, в международных конференциях, что должно быть первоочередным.
And the priorities in this regard have been subject for very hot discussions over the course of the last several years.
И неопределенность ответов на этот вопрос во многом зависит от понимания тех огромных трудозатрат, финансовых затрат, которые без сомнения понадобятся для реализации этих целей.
Now, there is a lot of uncertainty in this regard, and I think it could be very easily correlated. The uncertainty could be correlated with the crisp, clear understanding of the financial burden of all kinds of resources that might be required in order to pull it off, and we need to actually run this comparison based on much more detailed assessment of what those efforts would eventually require.
И вот, размышляя о этих целях будущих космических полетов, мы пришли к выводу о том, что при всем многообразии интересных объектов в космосе решать необходимо не частные задачи, а по возможности их совокупность, создавая систему космических средств, своего рода инфраструктуру исследования космического пространства.
And the discussion like that has been taking place as part of our daily routine at our agency for quite some time now. And eventually we came to the conclusion that instead of trying to prioritize any particular direction, be it Mars, Moon, or asteroid, or libration points, we have got to work right now in order to establish a system, an infrastructure that would allow us to pursue variety of goals, and we should base our further achievements on the basis of having enough resources on orbit in order to lead our respective organization in either direction, depending on how the situation plays out at any given moment.
И на практике, на наш взгляд, это означает переход от проектирования от задач к проектированию возможностей. Необходимо решать не только конкретную какую-то задачу, а необходимо создавать возможность для решения максимального перечня типовых задач в определенной области.
Which means that essentially we are slightly shifting from trying to solve particular goals to creating opportunities. From any given goal, we need to jump off and step up in order to be able to create a possibility to get a better situation for all of us to get where we need to be, to make sure that we have an opportunity to achieve a set of goals in the future.
И в этих условиях, на наш взгляд, сегодня наступил тот момент, когда необходимо более тесно увязывать программы научного космоса и перспективы развития пилотируемой космонавтики.
And under these circumstances, I think we need to do a better job of tying and linking the existing programs that we are part of right now and the future goals of exploration.
За 51 год мы все доказали друг другу и всему мировому сообществу, что космонавты могут летать в космосе, они могут там проводить исследования, они могут находиться в космосе достаточно продолжительное время.
We have proved a lot of things over the course of the last 51 years. We proved to ourselves, essentially, that the cosmonauts, astronauts, could fly in space. We proved that they could fly in space for an extended time period.
И сегодня есть все возможные объективные условия для того, чтобы космонавта сделать элементом научного использования и исследования космоса.
Today we have every opportunity to enjoy a situation by which the crew member is not only going to be just a person who is flying in space, but he will be a big part of the existing infrastructure that would lead us to the further achievements in space.
И вот, опираясь на все эти понимания проблематик, о которых я сказал выше, мы пришли к выводу, что естественный следующий шаг, на наш взгляд, освоения космического пространства является Луна, для исследований которой сегодня создали все, имеются объективные возможности.
So based on the above, we arrived at a conclusion that the moon is supposed to be the next target in the best sense of this word for us, because we have a variety of parameters, a variety of conditions that satisfy the idea of moon exploration at this time.
Мы, конечно, не призываем забыть о Марсе, о Юпитере, об астероидах, но там такого комплексного исследования, использования человека, на наш взгляд, сегодня нет объективных предпосылок и технологических возможностей.
Now, we're not trying to convince you that we should not be doing anything in the area of Mars exploration, asteroid exploration. It's just in our professional opinion, today we have much better chances to come up with very productive and tangible results while concentrating on the moon exploration.
И мы рассматриваем Луну не как объект демонстрации возможностей, выставки экипажа и выполнения некоторого объема научных экспериментов. Мы уже в этой точке развития человечества было 40 лет назад. Мы считаем объективной необходимость создания на поверхности сегодня стационарных лабораторий. Своего рода баз для исследований с помощью исследований на Луне.
And when it comes to moon exploration, we're not talking about replicating what the mankind has achieved like 40 years ago, which is just a flight to the planet and a landing and sometime on a surface, collection of samples and stuff like that. But we are rather talking about establishing permanent stationary bases on the surface of this planet, which is essentially different approach to how the exploration on the moon should be achieved.
И как этап подготовки к предстоящему исследованию на Луне мы уже осуществляем целый ряд проектов, подготовки таких запусков и разработки автоматических космических аппаратов, как Луна Глоб, Луна Ресурс, с участием в международных лунных программах.
And as part of the preparation for those future activities, we're already actively pursuing the launches of automated vehicles like Luna Globe, Luna Resource, that are supposed to set the stage for further exploration effort on the moon.
И мы понимаем, что такие глобальные исследования возможны только, конечно, в рамках международной кооперации.
At the same time, we fully realize that this type of effort, the magnitude of this effort, could only be achieved based on the international cooperation.
И, конечно, здесь надо вспомнить о нашем сотрудничестве. Это проект МКС, который показал, какие огромные возможности создает международное сотрудничество.
Which brings the ISS program, and everybody is a witness of what kind of amazing capabilities are associated with the common effort that we have engaged into as part of the implementation of the International Space Station program.
И этот опыт, конечно, надо использовать. И, возможно, ввиду нового целого уровня задач наша кооперация должна быть даже более, намного более глубокой, чем сегодня.
And we have done what is commonly referred to as an insurmountable amount of work on the International Space Station, and we have gained enormous amount of experience on the International Space Station. And quite obviously, it is time to capitalize on that in order to assure our further steps. And I think I would like to encourage everyone to think of how we still should streamline our international cooperation at this point.
И, конечно, потребуются новые формы сотрудничества, новые институты научной кооперации, экспертизы проектов, единые международные стандарты.
And quite certainly we need to be active, we need to be proactive, and we need to think in the most creative way of how we should streamline our international cooperation by way of establishing new scientific international institutions, by way of establishing internationally accepted standards.
И еще одну вещь, которую бы я хотел сказать. Мне очень приятно услышать индийского коллегу, где такой гигантский интерес к космосу.
And one more thing I wanted to point out. I was deeply touched by the statement made by our Indian colleague, and particularly in the area of the interest that this country enjoys in terms of younger folks being showing interest in becoming space-related activity engineers and specialists.
То, конечно, вот для России, мне кажется, там, в какой-то степени и для Соединенных Штатов Америки, для Европы, это уже прошедший этап, когда все хотели полететь в космос. И, конечно, нам необходимо совместно выработать вот какие-то подходы для того, чтобы привлечь интерес, молодежь в первую очередь, к космическим исследованиям и найти подходы, чтобы показать, что действительно за космосом великое будущее.
I think we have had a similar situation in our country, and the United States and Europe also went through this kind of period, but for the most part, it's sort of over at this time. So we need to think of how to reestablish the interest, how to make sure that the younger folks will be just as enthusiastic about being involved in new goals and objectives in space as some generations in the past.
Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Robert?
Okay. Well, I'm just to pile on my comments a little bit from the opening remarks that I made earlier. We continue to make good progress on the exploration activities that we have lined out for us. The MPCV and the SLS programs continue to make progress so we can get beyond Earth orbit. We continue to look for ways to use the International Space Station, as my colleagues have said, to help us make those steps as we move forward. It's a great test bed for us to use now to work on some of the technologies and some of the human factors that we have to deal with as we move beyond Earth orbit. The other thing that we're doing is we continue very strongly in our space science programs. Those science programs are going to inform us on the conditions and the environment that our crews and our people will see when they do go beyond Earth orbit. The other thing we're working very hard on is technology infusion into these. We're looking at there's several technologies other than just the launch vehicle and the space capsule that we have to tackle before we can take people beyond low Earth orbit, and I think that's one of the big advantages to this kind of a forum where we can have those discussions about what each partner, each group can bring to the table as we face those. So I think honestly that the enabling the success of the commercial program like we saw this morning, is just a continuing step along getting the low Earth orbit portion of our business turned over to others so that we can focus on getting beyond Earth orbit. Ultimately, these global partnerships are going to be critical to our success. And conferences like this are really important because we get a chance to share our thoughts and what we're thinking, our perspectives. You're hearing it from my colleagues today. Bringing those collective strengths to the table is what's going to help us solve this mission. We're all here because, very frankly, we have a passion for the business that we're in. We want to see us explore as a race of people. And I think that, to me, is one of the things that we all have in common. And we need to pull on those. And we need to pull on what we learned from the International Space Station collaboration. It's a great example of international collaboration and cooperation. And I think that, to me, is something we can use as a foundation as we choose to go further. And then finally, I just have to thank my colleagues for being here today with us. And sharing their thoughts and what they're thinking as they go forward in their own issues. And as we continue to talk as a team, I think that'll help us all be better as we go forward. So I look forward to any dialogue and questions we have. Bob, thanks.
Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that there's a large stack of questions, but most of them have been addressed by one or more of the speakers. The bad news is, as with launch windows, there's an opening and a close. And we have already exceeded the close of the launch window. And so there's a great panel coming this afternoon. Many of the questions, and I'll pass them on to Kathy, can be addressed during that panel. But at this point, let me ask you to thank our panelists for their great contributions.
Thanks, Bob. To all the I would like to ask our panelists to stay up on stage for the upcoming press conference, please, which will take place right now, right here. Let me ask our delegates to move to the solarium just outside for our first networking coffee break, sponsored by Battelle Memorial Institute. And the technical sessions will start at 10 o'clock, so please be in time at your technical sessions. And we would like now to ask media and press to come forward closer for the press conference.